Welcome to listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan, a podcast about the art and hobby of miniature painting. I'm Mike, and thank you so much for joining us on our continued quest to become better, braver, happier painters. So we haven't been terribly consistent lately, and I apologize for that. It has been kind of a crazy start to the summer, and the last few months have been somewhat hectic. Such is life, that's the way things go, but right now, we're in the process of scheduling interviews, and we're hoping to be back in full stride in the next couple of weeks. I will be on vacation next week, but that's okay. We have interviews that we have scheduled, and we're going to hopefully bring you the best hobby content we can possibly bring. Today, we're excited because we have a fantastic interview with Gavin Garza. He recently won the Slayer Sword at Adepticon 2022, which is pretty damn impressive. Really enjoyed having a conversation with him about how he approaches the hobby and how he got into it, and there's a lot to learn from it. He is a very enthusiastic painter, and it was really a lot of fun. So without further ado, Gavin Garza. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I have to admit, I actually had seen a little bit of your work beforehand through coming through like Instagram feeds and stuff along those lines. But so sometimes when you posted, you'd come up as a recommended person to follow. So I'm really excited to talk to you because I've actually what people said about your style after the Slayer Sword is exactly what I thought when I first saw it. I'm like, damn, that is one of the cleanest painters I have ever seen in my life. That is amazing. Pisses me off a little bit too, but but Gavin, first, congratulations on the Slayer Sword. That is an amazing accomplishment.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
The one thing I'll ask before we kind of get into hobby origin story or not was how surprised were you that it was the skink that won it? Like, did that blow you away, or what was your reaction?
Oh, it was completely unexpected. I cannot believe it won. Even today, I can't believe it won. It was. I remember going into Adepticon. It was kind of a. I never originally intended to go, if I'm honest. I kind of got peer pressured into it by a group of friends. They're like, yeah, "Why aren't you going to Adepticon? Why aren't you going to Golden Demon?" I'm like, "Yeah, I guess you have a point." So it's like, I painted something up, and if I was going to paint up something, I wanted to paint up something that I like. So I chose the skink, and yeah, I was hoping for maybe bronze. I thought if I won a bronze, I would be ecstatic. Um, and then they called my name for gold, and I was thrilled. I couldn't believe that. And then they announced the Slayer Sword winner, and my model popped up there, and I was stunned. I could not believe it. Shocking.
I'm so impressed by like different styles, different techniques, and so when I see somebody that can paint that cleanly and that, I don't know. I mean, it is like if you were going to hold something up and say this is perfectly painted, your mini is the first that comes to mind now. So it's very well deserved. Very well deserved.
Thank you so much.
So you know what? Let's give our listeners a little bit of background. Like, how did you get into the hobby?
So, I've been painting since probably around 2017 or so. So it technically goes back a little bit further than that. So I think I had picked up I had always heard about 40K, and I was always interested in like the universe. So I picked up, I believe it was Dark Vengeance, and I think it was the sixth edition starter box for Warhammer 40K. And I remember taking out, I think, the librarian model in that box for the Dark Angels, and I assembled them and I tried to paint him up. And it was going so badly that I gave up and I basically rage quit for like 5 years. Um, Eventually, I shelved that box, didn't touch it for a long time. And come around 2017 or so, I was looking for something new to get into. I kind of wanted to get into something a bit more artistic, a bit more arts and craftsy. Um, so I went digging through my collection. I'm like, I'm gonna try this whole painting miniatures thing again. So I got that box out and I started looking up some YouTube tutorials. And I actually came across it was the old Duncan Rhodes videos, and he had actually done a whole series on the Dark Vengeance box. So I looked up how he painted everything in that box, and of course, it's basically just base coat, wash, dry brush for most of it, right?
Right. Bonus
Eh,
edge highlight for characters.
yeah, exactly. It's pretty basic stuff when you look back at it, but for me, um that kind of technique, it made it so much more approachable. Like it felt like, oh, I can actually do this. Seeing the way that he painted it, the fact that you actually have to thin your paints and basic stuff like that, it suddenly became something. It became something I could actually achieve. So I started practicing like that, just your simple base coat wash and highlight stuff. And as I continued doing that, I decided, I feel like I can go further, but I don't know how to go further. And so I started looking at more and more YouTube stuff, and I started finding other painters on YouTube that had more detailed explanation. You had painters that would talk about volumetric highlighting, like where to place highlights. And then from there, I would expand that further into looking at how 2D artists highlight volumes and stuff, and try to apply that to miniatures. And it's just more and more of that, basically expanding upon that. And that was basically how I kind of got the jump start into it. That's really, yeah, I would say that's how it began, and then it was just kind of expanding on it from there, and a lot of practice after that.
What would you say was kind of like the biggest challenge you faced as you were going through like trying to increase your skills? It,
Um, so sorry, continue.
no. I was going to say it could be a skill, it could technique, it could be, anything. It doesn't have to be necessarily a specific thing. But anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
It was probably it's might sound a little bit silly, but it's just the basics, honestly. Like just getting a smooth base coat. Like
Mhm.
it sounds so trivial. But just getting a base coat that is perfectly smooth um, was troublesome at first. Making sure that all of your after that, making sure that you have smooth blends, right?
Mhm.
So making sure that you have one color that perfectly blends into another color was another hurdle to jump over. And it's just like the stuff that we kind of take for granted once you have a certain amount of experience. But when you're a beginner, this stuff is so foreign to you, and trying to learn all this with no prior experience is just it really is difficult. Like it's easy to see why a lot of people kind of don't get past that, because
Mhm.
it does take a lot of hard work to get past that. It takes a lot of perseverance. So when you see people that are able to perform at such a high level, and they can finally get past that kind of hurdle, I think I can really look up to that. But yeah, I would definitely say just mastering the fundamentals was the hardest part for me.
That the smooth base coat's no joke. I mean there, and especially like when you're starting to try to elevate your skin tones, getting a smooth base coat with skin tone paint is like, like I don't know, it's a pain in the ass, So that you remind me of the one thing that I remember Tex Winter, who was the defensive coordinator for the Bulls when they had their sixth championship run. The number one thing he said was fundamentals win championships. I mean, I getting the fundamentals down in anything to me is like so critical. So that's nice to hear from you that that was where. I think a lot of people struggle with those type of things, and especially when you talk about paints that get chalky and things along those lines. It's a common that struggle is definitely real. Um, I did a little bit of snooping through your Instagram prior to this, and I noticed something that you have a lot of blood ravens. Why did you choose this chapter? And for those who don't no, Blood Ravens are Space Marines chapters, a chapter, and they're red with cream shoulder pads and a lot of black accents. And so, what drew you to the Blood Ravens?
So when I first heard about 40K, it was actually through the original Dawn of War video games, right?
I knew it. I knew
No.
it. I was betting money on that. Go ahead. Sorry.
So to me, they were such like a I had never really heard of 40K before then. So like that really was my introduction to the whole kind of franchise. So yeah, for me, Blood Ravens were the Space Marine faction. When I eventually kind of started diving into the miniature side of 40K, and I saw that all the miniatures, all the Space Marines were painted blue, and that Ultramarines were actually kind of the poster boys, I was like, why aren't the Blood Ravens?
Right.
I thought it was weird because for the longest time I thought they were the main characters.
Right.
It kind of blew my mind that they are barely even acknowledged. But yeah, that really was those old Dawn of War video games. I fell in love with them, and I wanted an army full of those guys.
Nice. Nice. How many blood ravens do you have?
Oh, I don't know the exact number, but probably close to around 3,000 points worth of stuff. There's stuff that I've painted that I've never posted as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, I probably have around 3,000 points worth of Blood Ravens.
That is a healthy amount. That is a healthy amount. That is definitely. Now, do you game still?
Oh, I do, yeah. I also
Okay.
use those for gaming. I've got a small gaming group. We'll get together every once in a while, smash out some games, maybe like once a month or so. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. That's where I got lost, is that I could never find gaming groups, and then I kind of fell in love with painting. So I've only think I've played 3 games of 40K and 3 games of Age of Sigmar, and I started back in Rogue Trader and then took a 25-year break, I want to say. But yeah, so that's awesome that you still get to play. That's a lot. I think I'm going to try Kill Team this year, but we'll see
Kill
how
Team
that
looks like
goes.
so much fun. I have a friend who plays Kill Team, and the rules for that, he says he loves the new rules. And so I really want to dive into that.
How do you approach a project? Kind of what, first of all, what inspires you?
Yeah, it really is the initial sculpt that inspires me.
Mhm.
Um, as once I see something with that really striking sculpt or really striking pose or like any sort of model that exudes like personality, and I know I want to paint it to a high level, I'll take that model and I know that that's just what I want to focus on. So it really just comes down to that initial sculpt, and if something just I think the paint job as well. Like if you ever
Mhm.
see like the box art paint job, a lot of
Right.
times that I'll find that very inspirational as well. But at the end of the day, it's the sculpt. If the sculpt is something that really appeals to me, that's what
Mhm.
inspires me to want to paint that.
Nice. Do you sometimes build a story in your head behind the model you're painting?
I do, yes. There's always some kind of story. A lot of times it comes down to like what kind of faction they are. Sometimes it'll be like what kind of world they live in, what kind of environment they're in. I've done more like kind of environmental painting as well, like where like I'll imagine like a setting that they're in, and then like I'll paint according to that with like all sorts of like different lighting effects and stuff. But a lot of times like the story comes down to basically who they are, what environment they're in, and really like the initial pose, like I had mentioned earlier, plays a large part in it. It's like, what are they doing? Like,
Mhm.
what world do they have it? What are they doing in that world? And then I just kind of want to paint it based on that.
Yeah, it's so much more interesting when there's some motion or something in it. Like it's so much more. I gravitate more towards models with motion too. So I totally get what you're saying about that. Now, and are there artists out there, and they can be in the mini world and the non mini world, that influence your work or inspire you too?
There's quite a yeah, there's a ton. Too many to name of really, or too many to name really. But I think one of the biggest ones for me is one of the bigger ones for me is probably David Soper.
Oh
I just
yes.
love Soper stuff. Um, I've kind of like I've gone to his website, I've looked at the photos, I've blown them up on a computer to see how he applies paint.
Hmm.
And I really just love his stuff. I've definitely tried. I feel like I've tried to kind of duplicate the way that he does a lot of his blending. He seems to use like a lot of like micro stippling and like basically going pixel, almost like pixel by pixel, in the way that he paints. And I
Right.
feel like I've really tried to kind of latch onto that idea and apply it to a lot of the stuff I do. Another one as well is Max Fillet. Um, he currently works for Games Workshop, but the stuff he does is absolutely incredible. And even knowing like the fact that he's like, when he paints a lot of the stuff for the box art for that company, knowing that he's like on a time limit when he paints all that is makes it even more incredible to me. Um, it's just amazing the stuff that he can do.
It's another one of those things that
Yeah.
kind of pisses people off too. You're like, damn it, you had to paint that in how long, and I'm still 60 hours into this.
Yeah, the one that he painted recently that I'm pretty sure he painted this is that he I think worked on the newest Skaven model, the Death Master, I believe it's called. He's basically the guy with like kind of the circular blade, and he's holding a knife in his right hand, and he's kind of like crouched over, kind of like
Right.
you were. And he's painted it like all in non-metallics. It just looks incredible. That is a model that uh, kind of referencing back to a previous question, a model like that inspires me to want to paint it. And the paint job is a big part of that as well. It's like I look at that paint job, I look at that sculpt, um, and I just want to paint it. It's like it's so well done that I feel like I want to do my version of that.
See that is such an important thing for people to hear, because a lot of times people see box art and get chased away. And so the fact that seeing the box art help inspires you, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's really important that to be inspired and not overwhelmed, right? We definitely approve of David Soper here on this podcast. He was an early guest of ours. I love that dude. I've learned so much from Sprocket's Small World. It's ridiculous. Um,
I
but
love it.
now, so we talked a lot about GW stuff. I saw that you also painted the Reconnect bust, and I can't remember now off the top of my head what company that's from.
I believe it's oh man, I'm gonna get it wrong. It's either Robot Rocket or Neko Galaxy. I want to say Robot Rocket.
Okay, and that's those would have been my two guesses given the nature of the models that they produce. And beautiful, it's beautiful work, by the way. I love the blue hair a lot. That's actually I don't know why blue hair on cyborg model or sci-fi female models is just an awesome thing to me. Have you ever done any other busts or ventured into the world of 75 millimeter figures?
I haven't. I've been wanting to, but I have not yet. I haven't been able to get back into that recently. But it's definitely something I really want to get back into. There's something. It's a very different style of painting versus 28 millimeter stuff, right? Yeah. But I would definitely love to get back into it. Yeah.
There's a lot of blank canvas on it, right? You can go crazy with textures and freehand and light placements, etc. So yeah, and that's kind of where I've kind of moved. I still have a bunch of GW stuff, but I find myself picking up bigger models, probably because my eyes are getting old. Um, and so also with that, I'm going to throw in this to the listeners as well, really quickly. If you look at his Instagram, which we'll have links for, he also has done some wonderful tutorials. I actually got a chance to look through the color guides and how to do eyes. Those are awesome, and thank you for posting those. Those were a lot of work, and people like me read them and appreciate them.
Yeah. No problem. Referring back to the color guide in that bust as well. I, I just because I kind of want to talk about it a little bit more.
Please do.
um,
Absolutely.
so the colors used on that bust, I was having so much fun experimenting with it because I only used I think 6 paints across the entire model, and it was kind of an exercise in just kind of using a limited color palette to a certain extent. And obviously I wasn't just using primaries, but it was an interesting experiment for me, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something that I was really proud of.
Yeah, you should be. It's absolutely beautiful. And let me ask you this: was there anything that you learned from forcing yourself to be in a limited color palette?
It's something that I think the number one thing it taught me is that you really don't need it doesn't matter what kind of hues you use, if I'm honest. It comes down to color values, right? So as long as the color values for whatever you're working on are correct, the hues really don't matter all that much. I mean, she's got pink, like purple and pink skin and like blue hair, but it doesn't really matter, if I'm honest, because it still kind of looks right because because you're using the same colors throughout the model, everything still kind of feels like it's cohesive. You don't really it doesn't immediately strike you as the wrong colors or wrong initially, I guess I should say, because all the color values are for the most part correct. I'm not going to pretend like it's perfect or anything, but yeah, that was probably the number one thing I learned is just like how important color values are when painting anything. Um, I also learned a lot with the non-metallic metal, and I think I had a lot of fun with that as well. It was just a really fun piece to work on.
Painting definitely seems joyful to you, and that's fantastic. And we need more of that. You know what I mean? In the painting world, just enjoying painting and learning lessons and having fun. So kudos, man. That's really It's so cool to hear somebody with such a positive attitude.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of fun with it.
Um, so then you've never thrown besides that first wave of shoving the thing in the box, never thrown a model across the room then.
uh, not really.
Really? That's okay. We had an artist on who told me he threw one out the window. So I was like, I can relate, but I wouldn't have done it, but I can relate.
I think the closest I've come is stripping something. Just get really upset with something, even if you're hours and hours into it, and just like, no, it's time to start over.
Everybody's visited Simple Green Lake,
Exactly.
So one of the things I love to do now with artists is to make you reflect a little bit and like um, can you kind of critique your work and where do you think that you want to improve areas that you think you can improve?
Oh, too many to count. I think I look at people on Instagram and I look at the way a lot of people paint, and there's a certain style that I think I could definitely kind of lean into a bit more. It's more of that kind of like illustrative style.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see people like I hope I don't butcher his name, like Alonzo Torrent on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, and he has a very illustrative style where
Right.
like his stuff looks like it's almost like a 2D drawing, but it's a model. He's not the only one as well. There's people like Arno, I think his name is. Lazo. Oh my God, I'm going to butcher all of these names.
That's okay. I do too. So yeah.
um, but yeah, like they have like this very illustrative quality to all the stuff that they paint, and Arno's stuff, for example, is also like very bright. Like you look at it, it's just extremely bright. Like the way he paints skin tones and all that stuff, like it just there's a certain way that he paints all that I would love to learn how to paint. But yeah, there's like I feel like I like the style that I currently feel like I have. But I would definitely love to expand upon it, especially for larger scale stuff and go into like that more kind of illustrative style. I feel like there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. I almost feel like when it comes to like the technical stuff, like blending, painting straight lines, that sort of stuff, like that, I feel like that stuff like is at a high enough level at this point where like I need to start looking at the more artistic side of stuff. And I've done that in the past, but I definitely need to lean more into that.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, have you ever seen the dude who does the Gundam? And he paints them, and they look like they're. It looks like a 2D painting, and then he turns them to the side, and it's a model.
I've seen these images before. I have no idea who paints them, but I've seen
Yes,
them before.
there's a guy named K12 that does it, and that's one I can think of off the top of my head. But I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like that's just absurd.
I love it.
And so when you say illustrated, if you're more like talking maybe like the Flame On miniature guy.
It to a certain extent, yeah, but so like when I when I say like illustrative style, it's more so the way that they place highlights on these models. It's not in the traditional kind of uh, like zenithal highlight kind of thing,
Hmm.
or like even like having like 2 points of light coming from something from like if you look at like Darren Lathan stuff or whatever, he's got like the 4 points of light, right?
Right.
So
Hmm.
so it's almost like everything's like sitting on a stage and it's being lit from four directions. I love that style, and I feel like I paint that style quite a bit.
Hmm.
But this illustrative style, it almost imagines something as living in an environment where there's light coming from a direction, it's bouncing around the environment, and it's creating a whole bunch of interesting lighting effects, or like it's creating bounce lighting that's coming from the ground, all sorts of stuff, right?
Hmm.
And you'll see there's certain techniques that they borrow from like 2D art. So they have
Right.
certain techniques like edge lighting, where like only like the kind of like it's hard to explain in an audio format, but
Understood.
if
Yeah, yeah. It is the challenge of
yeah,
the podcast. That's why we don't do anything about techniques really, because you can't really,
yeah,
you know. Um, but yeah, so maybe I can ask it this way, because some of it I have to associate it with artists, and so you're talking more of like an Eric Swinson, the guy who did the Mephiston model.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah,
exactly.
because
It,
I would consider him an illustrative style of painter.
yeah,
Um,
like, you can almost like take it, take a 2D, like take a picture of it and like put it in a book or frame it or whatever, and it would look like someone drew it, right? So anything like that, and yeah, Eric Swenson's another one. Like he's does incredible stuff. Yeah, I absolutely adore that style. I definitely need to learn more from it. Yeah,
Yeah, if you ever get a chance to take a class with Eric, it's a blast. I was lucky enough to do a 2 day workshop with him not too long ago, and it was eye opening. Yeah.
yeah, he seems like a really cool dude as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely love that opportunity.
Yeah, and he doesn't. He claims he doesn't do any blending. So um, I don't know
Well,
if that's
I
true.
don't know what his definition of blending is, but
Right.
we'll see about that.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So is that somewhere like the next question I was going to ask, if you want to talk where you see yourself over the next few years? Is that something that you want? That is that kind of the direction you want to go? Kind of leaning into the illustrative side, or are there other areas that you're interested
In the next few years, yeah, I think that's a side that I would definitely love to explore some more.
in?
At the same time, though, I feel like I actually really like it's almost like an heavy metal style in a way,
Hmm.
and I feel like I still really like that style. If I'm honest, like they're two
Sure.
very distinct styles, and I love them both.
Hmm.
It's not like I want to completely stop doing this kind of like the skink, or I've worked on stuff before like Space Marines and stuff where like I'll paint it in a very heavy metal type of style. But I would love to explore that, and I feel like there are ways that you kind of incorporate the two. If I'm honest, I think there's ways that you can change up that kind of heavy metal style and incorporate those illustrative styles to that. And there's a ways that you can evolve that style into something new. Um, and I think if you look at people like Max that I had mentioned earlier, I think
Hmm.
he's done a lot of that as well. And I think it's really interesting because if you look at the heavy metal style today, it is vastly different from what it was even like 10 years ago. It is
True.
completely different. And I think a large part of that is the way that they are kind of evolving it over there as well.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So I think, yeah, in the next few years, I would definitely love to learn more from that illustrative style. But I think there's ways that you kind of, blend those two kind of techniques and create something new.
That would be awesome, and then we'd have the Gavin Garza style.
I don't know about that one, but we'll see.
Well, no, it's just whatever you make your own. You know what I mean? And if you were to take one, I actually have a white dwarf from 1990, and that was and I look it back and I'm like, okay, if you would have taken me from then, who was getting into it and wanting to learn how to paint and actually really loving the painting part of it, and tossed me into the world of today, I would probably have a heart attack because of all that wasn't there. You know, like the heavy metal style was still better than I could paint back in those days. But it's so drastically different, like decade by decade. You're right. I mean, it's like looking at some of the new, especially character pieces. I've noticed a lot with Games Workshop that they're going to town. They're letting their artists go to town on the characters.
Exactly.
You know, which is it's nice to see. I enjoy it a lot. I love you know, even though I don't paint a ton of their stuff anymore, I constantly am watching what comes out because if a badass Stormcast character comes out, I'm going to have it. I've got a Stormcast problem. So one of the fun things we like to do with the podcast is we do a lightning round. And so, and it's just basically, I'll ask a question. You'll give me the off the top of your head answer. And we just kind of plow through them pretty quickly and have, you know, it doesn't, there are no rules basically, but the first one I'll start with the softball, which is the one I kind of gave you an example of. Are you a brush licker?
Yes. Yeah, you squeeze a little bit of lemon in the paint water, you're fine.
Right, there you go. Now, how often do you paint?
Probably every day. Even if it's only for like 30 minutes to an hour or whatever. I try to get in practice every day.
Do you have a designated painting area?
Yes. I have a painting desk, and sometimes on occasion I'll paint in front of my computer, but those are two different areas. But I do have a designated painting desk.
Fantastic. I'm a nomad, so I paint all over the house because my basement is ice cool. Water or medium?
Both. I think they both have their uses. I think I mostly use water, but there are definitely times where I will use medium, especially if I'm finding that paints have a kind of an uneven finish. I will definitely be mixing medium into my paints. So I think they both have their place.
Nice. Good answer. True metallic metal or non-metallic metal?
Both. I like them both.
No, this one you got to pick one.
I got to pick one. Okay,
you got to
okay,
pick one on this one.
Why do you do this to me? So I think I'm gonna go with true metallic metal. I'll give you a reason, and that's because I think true metallic metal I think it does something kind of special that non-metallic metal doesn't in a certain way, and I think true metallic metal it reflects light in a 3D space in a way that non-metallic metal never can. And while this isn't always obviously you can paint like light and like I was referring to earlier with like the kind of illustrative style. You can paint in high reflections and stuff into non-metallic metal and have it look great, right? But at the end of the day, when you look at it in real life, it doesn't reflect light in the same way that true metallic metal does. And there's something about true metallic metal when you look at it in real life and the way that light shines off of it that it just really catches your eye. And I genuinely enjoy how true metallics look. I really do.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
you'll get no judgment here. Like, well, we're on both sides of the coin. Dan is true metallic, and I do non-metallic. I try non-metallic. Only my only reason I don't do true metallic is because I am just cursed with metal paints. Metal paints and I don't get along very well. So, but that's fantastic. I'm glad to hear. You know, we probably get about 75% and do non-metallic metals, but you know, then we have like you and now Vince Venturella. Roman Laplante doesn't paint non-metallic metals very often. He's more into true metallic. So you're in very good company.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
The gods of the brush descend and say you may only paint with one paintbrush for the rest of your life. What paintbrush is it? What size?
I'm gonna go with a Winsor Newton size 1.
Okay. I assume Series 7, not miniature.
Series
right?
7, yeah, not miniature, normal size 1.
Why? What's with the Winsor Newton? You're talking to a Raphael guy, so.
So, this is coming from someone who has used like a lot of brushes. I think it's kind of a close race between Rosemary and Winsor Newton for me. And the only reason I would choose Winsor Newton is because Rosemary kind of feels like a bit of a compromise for me. I usually buy it because of the price. But it's like you're basically getting like 90% of the quality of Windsor and Newton for like a fraction of the price, and that's typically why I get that. But
Yeah.
if I had to choose one brush, it would definitely be Windsor and Newton. And I choose the size 1 because I just it's kind of the perfect size for me. It's
Mhm.
like it still has a really good tip on it. I can still do super fine details. I painted that whole skink using a size 1.
That's
So
impressive. Very well
yeah.
done.
So just to give you a frame of reference there, but yeah, I feel like you can get amazing detail with it. You can do base coats with it. You can do everything with it, right? So it's just
Absolutely.
kind of perfect.
Nice. I like that. That's excellent. Rosemary and Company are kind of my workhorse brushes, and then when I get into the fancier, when I'm doing the finishing touches, it typically is the Raphaels for me. So, but honestly, if people put a new brush in front of me, I'd try it in a heartbeat. Um, uh, I guess I'm a brush slut. All right. So the last one is, do you take care of your brushes?
Not very well. I know everyone says to take care of your brushes and wash them and stuff, but I don't think I've washed a brush in like 2 years.
Hey, you know what though? I have had people on here who have done YouTube videos about brush care, and I ask them that question, and they answer the same way. So you're not alone. I am anally retentive when it comes to that stuff, but I don't know. But I seem to be the exception rather than the rule. But thank you for being a part of the lightning round. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've won a Slayer sword and obviously a golden demon. Is there another prize that's on that you have your eyes on at all? Like, do you see yourself going to like the Nova Open in the Capital Palette or ReaperCon, etc.?
I wouldn't mind another Slayer sword.
Yeah,
No,
fair enough.
I haven't really thought about it if I'm honest. I definitely wanted to go back to Adepticon,
Mm-hmm.
um, or Golden Demon again in the future.
Right.
Nova, maybe Nova. I don't know. I feel like Chicago's my big trip for
Mm-hmm.
the year, so I'll probably just do Adepticon again next year.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not normally a big contest guy, if I'm honest. I usually just like painting for myself. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
this was kind of the exception because it was the first Golden Demon in who knows how long in the U.S., right? So
Right. Right.
I,
And
I
you
wanted to make
walked
an
away
exception.
with the home run. So
Yeah,
honestly, I think I would have retired. I'd be like, I'm done.
I mean, it's
Go
all
out like
downhill
George
from here, right?
Costanza. Go out on a high note. But you could also theoretically. I mean, I don't think Denton is too far. You could do ReaperCon. That's not too far from you, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I always forget about ReaperCon. Ah,
Yeah, I've done the Nova for about 5 or 6 years, and then there was no Nova last year, and ReaperCon happened, so I went, and I was astonished at how much fun I had. Like it was, even though it is more of a Dungeons and Dragon and game thing, but there's still, of course, miniatures. The weirdest thing was when I walked into their main ballroom area, which is probably like 40 tables. 38 of them had people painting at them,
oh
just
wow.
sitting there painting, and I'm like, all right, this is my kind of place, and, and then they have a really cool thing where they have an artist alley, so where people that are teaching classes sit kind of between their classes and they paint and talk to people, and so you can pick brains. Pick their brains about stuff, and they even will give you feedback on your models and stuff like that. So it was just such a cool experience. It was such a so different than a gaming convention. It was very laid
Yeah.
back. So, which was probably more my speed, because I made a mistake of wandering into a 40K hall at Nova Open one time, and I guess they were like in the quarterfinals or something like that. And man, that was freaking tense.
That tournament scene is too intense for me. I don't know if I can survive
Right,
that.
right. It just zaps the joy out of everything. So, is there a model out there? And it doesn't have to be any genre or anything, but whatever. If there's something out there that you would hope that would get made, or maybe it's made STL. But the example I always give is I would love to see the characters from Stephen King's Dark Tower series become models. Is there anything like that out there for you?
Oh man, I don't know. That's a hard one. I like playing. Man, I am a big classic shooter fan. I would
Mhm.
love like a good, and I'm sure that there's probably 3D models for this, but just like some of those like classic like sculpts for the old like demons in the old Doom games, like the old Pinky demons and the old Kaka demons and stuff like that. Just like the classic
Nice.
stuff. Like I don't know. There's just something really fun about that stuff. And if you look back at like how they used to make those old games, like they actually made those things like with clay.
Right.
So they actual 3D models for that stuff do exist. So I don't know. A part of me would really love to see like that stuff kind of realized in like a miniature form. Yeah, with like high quality miniatures.
Right. You know, it's one of those things where you just got to Google the STL these days. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I one of the original ones I used to tell people was the Silverhawks, which was I don't know how old you are, but it's an '80s TV show. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it. It was on at the same time the Thundercats were on, and I was like, I would love to see those as models. And then I got an email from a listener going, "Yeah, they're out there. Go check out the STLs." And I'm like, "Holy crap!" You know, which were purchased within 5 minutes of getting that email. But no, you know what? There's a question. Have you got into 3D printing at all?
I have not. I've never even tried it out. I think it's mostly just because I don't have the room for a 3D printer. I'm just kind of
Mhm.
like, I don't know even I don't even know where I'd put it if I'm honest. But it seems interesting. There's a lot of cool stuff. I know of people who have bought and used it before, and they've even like sculpted their own stuff. Like people who are really good at 3D modeling, they'll sculpt their own stuff and print it out. It seems like a really cool thing to do. But yeah, I just haven't had the opportunity.
Right. Yeah, and I'm always looking for basing bits and things along those lines. And I'm like, damn it, if only I had a cactus, you know? Um, and so, yeah, I don't have a 3D printer myself, but I have a neighbor who does. So I'm like, I'm buying STLs, you're printing them. My co host has a 3D printer, but getting him to print is a nightmare. Which is, sorry, it's a running joke on the podcast about Dan's lack of 3D printing with his two 3D printers. But so the motto of our podcast is better, braver, happier painters. Is there some advice that you could give our listeners as they continue their journey?
If you want to improve, I think the best piece of advice I can give you is learning how to is identify your weakness, identify what you really need to work on, and then focus practicing on that. I think the key to improvement is not just practice. Obviously, practice is important, but focus practice. Like focus on your weakness and turn it into a strength. And if you can do that, I think anyone can reach you can reach, that high display quality level that I think a lot of these people are looking to see.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Can you tell our listeners where to find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Gavin underscore painting underscore models.
Excellent. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes. I did notice that you do have a Paint and Putty account, but it is very inactive.
I don't. Yeah, I'm pretty bad about keeping up with that.
Hey, man, one of the running jokes of the podcast is our original motto was "We suck at painting, so you don't have to." But the real truth is that we really suck at social media. Like that, we're so bad, and it's probably because Dan and I are, Dan's over 50, I'm almost 50, and I think that we're still trying to figure those things out in our generation.
Oh, it's okay. I'm really bad about keeping up with Instagram. If anyone's listening to this and has tried to message me, I am sorry if I get back to you late. It's not because I'm ignoring you. It's probably because I only check Instagram a few times a week.
I feel your pain, and I totally understand and respect that, because I did the same exact thing. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. I really, honestly, I'm going to paint now because you kind of got me excited about painting. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, anytime, man. This is a lot of fun. I'm so glad I came on here.
Dan and I would like to thank Gavin Garza for joining us today. It was really a lot of fun to talk to him about his painting journey and his outlook. Thank you so much, Gavin, for sharing your enthusiasm for the hobby and for painting. And again, congratulations on the Slayer sword. That is a huge win. You can follow Gavin on Instagram at Gavin_painting_models. We'll have a link to it in the show notes. And again, what a fun time we had having that conversation. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan. You can also follow us on Twitter at Dry Listening, although I'm still debating about whether we're going to keep that going or not. We would love to hear from you. Drop us a line at listeningtopaintdry@gmail.com. If I have not responded to an email of yours that you've sent, please know I apologize, and I will be getting through all of our social media stuff. Remember, we always joke about our original motto was "We suck at painting, so you don't have to," but it also should be "We suck at social media." And so apologies, trying to get better. I'm actually also in the process of developing our website, so there's kind of a lot going on with the show, and it's kind of hard for me to do all those things and work and have a family and such. So anyways, enough with the excuses. We'd love to hear from you. Listening to paintdry@gmail.com. I will get back to you whether you chat us on Instagram, Facebook, or send us an email. Please like, subscribe, or follow wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could leave us a good review, we'd really appreciate it. It would help get the podcast more notice. And if you could spread the word, we'd also thank you as well. So get out there, grab that brush, have fun becoming a better, braver, happier painter. Until next time. Listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan is a production of LTPTWMD. All rights reserved. No portion of this recording may be used without the express written consent of the host. The music is Death by a Thousand Questions by Springtide. Download from the Free Music Archive on a non-commercial attribution share-alike basis. All views and opinions expressed in the show are solely the views and opinions of the person who said them. All celebrity voices, if any, were impersonated and done so poorly.